Welcome to Lunch with the Lord. I'm Pastor Mark. We're in Joshua, and we're going to be starting chapter 4 this lesson. But before we begin, our theme verse for Lunch with the Lord, Jeremiah 15:16. Thy words were found, and I did eat them, and thy word was unto me the joy and the rejoicing of my heart. Now, as we begin here in chapter 4 of Joshua, chapter 4 deals with the stones of memorial are being set up. They set up the memorial stones in Gilgal. Now, just about everywhere we go on this earth, there are stones, big stones, small stones, stones made of completely different materials. Stones of many different colors. They have reds and blues and blacks and browns and white and gray. And there are solid stones and there's spotted stones. Now, because of their strength and their durability, stones are used to make houses, walkways. They used to make a fence, a retaining wall, and also they are used for gravestones. The stones that we will be seeing here in this chapter will be used for a memorial to the generations of families that will be born down through history in the land of Israel. The reason why God chose stones for this memorial is because God wants this memorial to be around for a long time. He wants it to be there for many generations. He doesn't want the memory of this to go away. He's having it made of stones because he wants it there for a long time. Also, because the human heart is prone to forget the great works of God, unless we are reminded. That's another reason why. The reason why it's made of stones is because our sinful heart has a tendency to want to forget the great things God has done. So God says, no, we're going to not make it of wood or ceramic or anything like that. We're going to make it out of stones. Now, let's read verses 1 and 2, and it says, And it came to pass, when all the people were clean passed over the Jordan, that the Lord spake unto Joshua, saying, Take you 12 men out of the people, out of every tribe, a man. Now, it seems that these 12 men that are spoken of here are the same men that were chosen by the people back in chapter 3 and verse 12. And again, as I said in that lesson, more than likely those 12 men pretty much stood by Joshua, and because they were chosen for a reason, and they would want to kind of stay near Joshua to have Joshua let them know, when time is, what they're supposed to do and when they're going to do it. Now let's read verses 3 through 8. And it says, And command them, saying, Take you up out of the midst of the Jordan, out of the place where the priest's feet stood firm, 12 stones, and you shall carry them over with you, and leave them in the lodging place where you shall lodge this night. Then Joshua called the 12 men whom he had prepared of the children of Israel, out of every tribe a man. And Joshua said unto them, Pass over the Jordan before the ark, and pass over before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of the Jordan, and take you up every man of you a stone upon his shoulder, according unto the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, that this may be a sign among you, that when your children ask their fathers in time to come, saying, What do these stones mean? Well, then you shall answer them that the waters of Jordan were cut off before the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord when it passed over Jordan. And the waters of the Jordan were cut off, and these stones shall be for a memorial unto the children of Israel forever. And the children of Israel did so as Joshua commanded, and took up 12 stones out of the midst of the Jordan, as the Lord spake unto Joshua, according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel. And they carried them over with them unto the place where they lodged, and laid them down there. Now, God instructs Joshua to have the 12 stones taken out of the midst of the Jordan, and to set them up for a memorial where they camped that night. They were to take the stones from the place where the priests stood with the ark. God said that these stones were to be for a memorial unto the children of Israel. How long? Forever. Forever. These stones were intended by God to be there even until this day, today. But because of Israel's sin and rebellion, this memorial has been destroyed. Yet somewhere in the area where Gilgal was, these stones are probably still around. Why? Because stones don't generally go away. They don't generally just fade off into oblivion. No, there's those 12 stones. I'll bet you even today, you go over, if God knows exactly where they are. They're still around. It's just maybe they're covered by layers of dirt or something over time, whatever. But they're still there. But there are two more lessons to be learned here. Number one, the first lesson is, although the riverbed was dry when they crossed, yet there was still stones to be dealt with. Meaning, yeah, it was dry, but don't get the idea that they walked over on a nice sandy dirt, sandy ground going across over there. Oh no, there was stones to be dealt with. The stones that the 12 men picked out of the riverbed were not golf ball sized stones. They were stones to be held by both hands or carried on their shoulders. So these weren't small stones. They were good sized stones. This teaches us that although God prepares the way through our river, yet the way God prepares for us to a deeper walk with Him is not a smooth and a black-topped way. It's not a smooth way across the river. It takes an effort on our part to clear out the rocks and the debris on our way to a deeper life with God, a deeper study life, a deeper prayer life, a deeper fellowship life. The second lesson that we learn from this is that have you ever noticed that rocks that come from being underwater a long time, they look different than land rocks, especially rocks that come from a running water. They are usually a little smoother because of the water passing over them for so long a time. They're usually smooth. Sometimes they have different colors. Now, these 12 stones in Gilgal would attract attention, not only because they are set up in a way to get people's attention, but also because these stones would probably look different than all the other stones around them. You know, when you and I pass through the Jordan River, pass through the river of God's power, and by God's leading, and we deal with obstacles to our maturity in the river, then when we come out on the other side into the promised land, into the land of maturity, you know what? We look different. We look different. Why? Because we are different. The reason why those stones looked different was because they were different. They came from the river. They weren't out in the land, on the sand or on the ground. No, they weren't land rocks. These were river rocks. They look different. And when you and I pass through our Jordan River from our immaturity into maturity, we look different. We look different. You know why? It's because we are different now. We're mature. We have been with God in the river, and we come out different than when we went in. Not only was the crossing of the river a work of God, but we also are a work of God. We become a work of God. Yeah, those stones were in that river, and for many, many years, hundreds of years, maybe, who knows, maybe since creation, we don't know. But they were there for a long time, and they're pulled out now, and they're set on land. And they look different because they are different. And you will look different. You will act different. You'll speak different. You'll look different. You will be a different person. Why? Because God has changed you. God has brought maturity into you. He's brought a purity and a holiness into your life. Let's read verse 9. Chapter 4, verse 9 says, "And Joshua set up 12 stones in the midst of Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priests which bear the ark of the covenant stood, and they are there unto this day." Now, it is not said that God required these stones to be set up, but God did allow this to happen. You know, many scholars believe that from the words that it says, "and they are there unto this day," that it means that the priests carrying the ark did not continue to go down into the middle of the riverbed, but they stayed the whole time on the east bank of the river, where they first put their feet in the water. Some scholars believe that when the priest stepped into the water, that's as far as they went until everybody was crossed over. Now, if these stones were placed in the middle of the riverbed, then they would not be able to be seen unto this day. So how does he know? When the writer says they are there until this day, how does he know they're still there until this day? I mean, you can't see the bottom of and it has to be really clean water to see the bottom of a river. And the Jordan River is kind of deep. And so, I mean, how does he know if they're in the middle of the river, that they're still there? Unless there's some place where they can be seen. Now, this would mean that there would be a memorial on both the east and the west side of the river. And if these stones were also taken from the Jordan River, it would be a testimony to those on the east side of the river, the side of spiritual immaturity, that people have passed through this river and that God is well able to see them through. So did they put these rocks right in the bottom of the river? We don't know, because it says that they are there until this day. And the only way you can know if they're still there is if you can see them. And you know, if it truly is that these stones, these other 12 stones that are put in the river, were put actually on the east side on the east bank of the river, where they can be seen, they might also be stones from the river that look different. And they would be set up almost as a testimony to those who are living in the immature life that, listen, God has done a work. We have crossed over, and you can also cross through this Jordan River into a land of maturity. You don't have to stay in your immature life with God. You can cross over to maturity. Now let's read verses 10 and 11, and we'll finish there. And it says, "For the priests which bear the ark stood in the midst of the Jordan until everything was finished, that the Lord commanded Joshua to speak unto the people, according to all that Moses commanded Joshua. And the people hasted and passed it over. And it came to pass, when all the people were clean passed over, that the ark of the Lord passed over, and the priests in the presence of the people." Now, God will not forsake his people. He stays in the river until we are completely passed through the river. The words of Moses that God wanted Joshua to speak to the people could have been in Deuteronomy 31 verses 23. But Moses never gave Joshua specific instruction about crossing the Jordan River. The words which Moses commanded Joshua seem to be all about Joshua's calling by God to lead the children of Israel into the promised land. Now, we're going to finish here. We're going to continue on in verse 12 next lesson. But until then, walk with the Lord. I know he walks with you.